life and also are the ones most likely to be remembered in history. History does not record nearly as much information about the materially successful as about those mentally, morally, spiritually, and ethically successful, those who have lived above the corruptions of their times. In our own little way, in our own daily living and so forth, we can begin to try, not desperately, but sincerely, to carry on a better disciplined attitude toward life. We can discipline our entertainment programs and simply not attend things that we know are not good. We can discipline our reading to books that are inspiring and helpful, and get out of the great international publication field of scandal and gossip. We can get away from all kinds of infirmities of relationship. We can restore broken friendships. We can make new friends. We can try to be useful to people around us who are obviously in need. And little by little, we can find a life of harmlessness, a life which, in the long run, makes us no poorer than we would have been before, but richer in memories of beauty and memories of charity and love and friendship. These are the things that really count, because it is only the memory of what is done that we can take with us when we go. None of the things we have added up can go. They all have to stay behind for another generation to pour over in one way or another. But that which is in the soul of us is a deeper memory. Behind the memory of the mind, there is a universal memory in all of us. And that universal memory is the continuity of the soul, which goes on from life to life, helping us to grow. For all embodiments are merely days and nights of one life. And we are going to school one day, and then another day, and then another day. But the soul power itself is the long, vast computerization of everything that we have done since we existed as individuals. And little by little, this information becomes available to us, not by the perpetuation of incidents, but by pressures within ourselves, feelings, convictions, hopes, beliefs, ideals arise from some deeper source than from within our mental structure. The mind is only aware of this life, but the soul and the heart are part of our entire pattern of universal existence. That which we feel within ourselves as a great impulse to kindness, charity, thoughtfulness, and virtue, these are the testimonies to long experienced lessons. They have been ours for a long time, and we will continue to build them. But always we must realize that the primary purpose is that the individual shall simplify his life, that he shall gradually reach the point where he cannot continue to live entirely from the outside. There is a point in which the life tips from externals to internals. The individual who has very little enlightenment is completely under the pressure of the things around him and the persons who can influence him. As he gets wiser and wiser, the process is changed. Little bit by bit, the leadership comes from the inside and not from the opinions of other people. The principles in the heart and mind take strength, and the fallacies of our present physical systems become apparent. It's an amazing thing, it seems to me, that with science as far advanced as it is in many things, that it seems to remain completely unaware of anything not physical. It just cannot transcend the physical patterns of things. The scientist might like to view the universe as a vast computerizing mechanism, but he will not put any operator behind it. He will insist that the machine works itself. And a computer working itself will soon disillusion anyone who tries it, because it cannot be done. The great mystery in life is how these things can happen how this infinite diversity of human relationships, the infinite diversity of stars, constellations, the vast distances of time and space, and the number of tiny little cells that are found in the stalk of a plant, everything perfect, everything exactly as it ought to be, everything showing the highest skill of creativity that is imaginable, everything obviously bearing witness to a supreme intelligence that never contradicts itself, that never goes against its own rules, but is forever trying to bring living things into harmony with life itself. How science can face this and not see anything is very difficult to understand. The reason has to be very simple. The mental coordinator has taken over. It has done it to the degree that the mind has become and is remaining the slayer of the real. There has to be something to break through this boundary, to get over this insistence that the mind is the highest power in man. It is not. There is much above the power of the mind, but the most immediately available is the power of the heart. Above that, the evidence of a soul long conditioned in existences. These things are the real basis of strength, the basis of securities. Some way in this turn for something better, we must be able to remember the story in the advertisements from Parnassus by the Italian satirist Giorgiano Boccalini. The gods, seeing that men were in a terrible condition, decided to elect a committee to go down and find out what was wrong and do something about it. So the committee of sages and scholars went down to see what they could do about humanity. And all they had were ideas of one kind or another. That some thought there should be a window put in the human chest so that everyone could read a person's heart and find out what he really felt. But this was rather inconvenient and somewhat curious anatomically, so this was rejected. And so on it went and on until everything was rejected. And finally, in order to have a report to give to the waiting world, the committee elected a member to get up and say that they had made the great reform of all times. They had regulated the price of cabbage. And this is what we do. And because of this very wise and naturally certain thought, Boccalini was strangled in his bed. Because people didn't want to hear that. They wanted to hear that everything was just wonderful, in spite of the fact that nothing seems to be too wonderful at the moment. But in effort to solve problems, we go through everything you can think of that will not disturb our materialistic focus. We do not want to move from a competitive to a cooperative basis in life. We want to have the possibility of being great successes, even though most of us have to remain less successful. On the hope that if one person can become wealthy, thousands refuse to accept a better way of life and thought. All this adds up to the very simple problem that the mind must be re-educated. It is a job that usually has to take place after the individual graduates from school, because there's nothing in the schooling that's going to help him much to do it. The only thing a schooling can do is to give a certain orderliness. It can make a person disciplined to learn certain things. From the discipline, perhaps, that he has gained in 12 or 15 years of education, the individual can begin to discipline himself, can begin to sense the need to clear up his own confusions. And if necessary, to make the thing as simple as possible, he can begin keeping records of his own conflicts and contradictions. He can write down his decision on a matter of a certain day and read it 6 months later and see whether his decision was really a good one. I know an individual who has been wrong in a number of details for over a period of years, but they have yet to admit that they ever made a mistake. And when the mistake hits them in the face, they have some evasion to turn it off so that it doesn't interfere with their personal estimation of infallibility. This is the way we all go. But out of this, we have to come finally to the realization that the inner life must lead the outer life, and that our lives up to now have been largely on the basis of history and the basis of records of material activities. We are thinking of ourselves as the descendants of the Romans and the Greeks and all the ancient people. We read with considerable thoughtfulness the stories of their miseries, misfortunes, and tribulations. It may occasionally dawn on us that we are having the same difficulties, but that is where it ends. There is no real vitalization. But if a person can reach a period or condition in life in which he leads his own life instead of following his mind, a great deal can be accomplished that is valuable and useful. The individual probably will have certain problems to face if he does it. He will find that growing is not easy, and that correcting mistakes is not easy. But he will also have a gradually unfolding sense of accomplishment. He will begin to have a real sense of his own significance and value in the unfolding of world affairs. So it is very useful and necessary for each person to try for this contemplative type of living. And the Zen man does it in a very, very simple way. He is very quiet. He sits down and tries to clear the mind of all the foolishness that has accumulated there. He tries to get out of his mind the pressures of politics. He has to try to correct the constant statements of those around him that everything is wrong. He has to keep on quietly contemplating the universal pattern and his own place in it, and gradually come to the realization that he is here to serve, that he is here to be of value to his fellow men. And while he may have a deeper insight into some of these things, the services he renders will be perfectly recognizable by those about him. The individual who goes out and helps people in trouble may do it from an invisible cause within themselves, but the visible effect will be seen and known by those he serves. Therefore, there is a certain evidence of the intent and of the achievement. And wherever we find a truly noble example of human effort, we see that it is a symbol of an intent within the soul itself. What comes from the soul is beautiful in terms of the soul. It may not be the ultimate beauty we all long for, but it is a beautiful act in itself, a masterpiece of mental and emotional achievement. And as we make these more and more frequently, we realize that the greatest of artists in all the world is not the painter or the sculptor, but the one who is able to internalize and manifest the great art of living itself. If we can only do these things, most of the problems that we solve will be a little better. But it's good to remember that the mind is not a leader. It is only a help in time of trouble. It is a kind of a Luciferian help also. It can get us into a lot of trouble. But if we are able to gradually convert the mind, if we can make the mind a convert of nobility, idealism, and integrity, then it can become a wonderful servant. It is a wonderful servant, but a horrible taskmaster. If we are run by the mind, we are run to destruction. But if we use the mind as an instrument, like the computer, because we have a personal consciousness regulating that machine, because it is a servant of a conscious power, then the mind is useful. But if we mistake this mind for that power and are willing to allow ourselves to be constantly deceived by our own thinking, then it is not so good. So I think that with our problems as they are, it would be a good plan for everyone who